let's see here. The computer tells us that we are indeed... Wow, the computer worked really fast.
Did it?
Yeah, look how fast the computer worked and told us that we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the live stream tonight, where we're going to answer your questions and answer as many questions as we possibly can. I hope you can hear me. I hope everything's good. Just let us know. Yeah.
Rapid fire questions.
So that's what's going to happen, I believe. So a couple things before we get into the stuff tonight. I'm just trying to fix all my electronics here as we...
You've got a lot of devices there.
I like being surrounded. I
only
feel
have
like
one. Look, there we are. That's so weird.
That is weird.
There's 4 of us now.
Wow, that's more than what we need. So I was actually going to say something at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then I totally forgot. So
wow.
Anyway, the announcements for tonight, we're going to keep it short. You had a video come out this morning where you did the upside down.
It did.
Now, how many of you, we're going to start out with a question. Where is the upside down from? What is that from?
Yeah,
because as soon as I saw it, I was like, you know what? That's the upside down, and the fish is in it.
Yeah, he's like, oh, so we should call it Fireball Goes to the Upside Down. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Okay. But I didn't know what he's referring to. Does anybody know where that reference is from?
I think they'll know.
You think so?
I think somebody's going to know what that's from.
See.
But anyway, that was Joanna's video on the small scape this morning that came out, which I think is pretty cool. Yep, look at that. Sarah, boom, knocking it out. Oh. Love the upside down scape. Stranger Things. That is absolutely true.
Okay, but trivia, you put in when I named him Fireball, you think it comes from Pitbull.
Well, that's the
he
only
was not
thing
the inspiration. Does anybody know where I would have gotten the name Fireball from? We'll see. We'll see if anybody knows.
Fireball.
It's somebody's friend's name.
She's just trying to make up a thing. It's
that's why I named him, because it's so cute.
You named it after
Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Well,
his friend.
You didn't give anybody a chance to say the thing.
I'm just thinking that nobody's going to get a random Christmas reference right now.
Yeah.
Just
okay. So,
yeah.
Running Man. Was that? No. The Running Man wasn't. It was Christmas Tree. The Running Man. So I can't even remember the villains. The guy on the ice skates. Hey, Christmas Tree over here. That guy. Which I don't remember. And then, there was the dude at the end. It was Jesse Ventura. So, yeah, I remember, but I don't remember their names. But Fireball, I guess he might have been one. But okay, that's even better.
Because yes, James. Yeah, and because he does look like a fireball, like solar flare.
Yep. Sub-Zero. Thank you, Timothy. Yeah, we're off to a great start already here. We're not talking about fish at all. Just really interesting action movies from the 1980s.
Sure.
So
hey, we covered it all here.
We did. Other things we got going on. We have a pretty cool species profile coming out on Friday on this channel, Primetime Aquatics, which I think you're going to enjoy. And you've always got something crazy going on the small scape on Saturdays. So those are usually fun for me to edit because I just use my creative side there, at least a little bit that I actually kind of sort of have. We have some new items hitting the website. Not yet. But hopefully in the next week or two, we'll be able to make an announcement. We've got a couple new things that I think are going to be pretty cool.
Yeah.
A little bit different than what we've done so far. So that'll be interesting.
And if I'm involved, which I am the marketing person here, it's going to be a little weird.
It is going to be a little weird. So tonight, as we already suggested, we are going to be hanging out. We will answer as many questions as we can as we go through the evening. And yeah, hopefully we'll have some fun. By the way, if you are from Texas, I hope you're doing well. And any other part of the country that got a bunch of snow and have been dealing with power outages and water issues and all that kind of stuff. And I think, although it hasn't been asked, I just want to start out, and many of you have probably gotten this answer already, but when it comes to, one of the questions we've been getting a lot lately in the last week or so since that happened is, what happens when we are under a boil order for our drinking water? What do we do about our fish tanks? And the answer is you're probably best off. You can still continue to boil the water. And in the short run, it's not going to do any harm. Obviously, you got to let it cool before you put it in your tank. And I would still go ahead and use a dechlorinator just to be safe. And then that's how I would roll with that until you are no longer under the boiling order. I think it's just probably a safe thing to do. Are your fish most likely going to get sick from that water? Probably not, but why take the chance, right? So hopefully things are getting better, and yeah, things will be okay in the near future. So I saw some interesting comments even before. So sometimes I'll glance at the comments, the chat, the live chat before the live stream starts. There was a couple things I wanted to talk about. And first one was Aquatic Care asked a good question. Do they only answer member questions? No. We try to answer as many questions as we can. Obviously, we're going to take our member questions and that kind of thing, but we try to make sure that we can answer the questions that we're able to answer. We try to do that. So that's how we roll. Mike asked even before we started, who's my killer? 15 cardinal tetras added, all dead. Current stock is angels, rainbows, cory cats, a 6-inch common pleco, red-tailed shark, and some black ruby barbs. Not sure the correct name. The first thing, when it comes to, at least in my opinion, at least for our water, when it comes to the standard neons and especially the cardinals, sometimes it's not a fish that winds up just killing them. It's the water parameters. And for us, and if you've got soft water with a lower pH, that might not be the case. But for us, when you get above like that 7.4 on the pH and the water is on that harder side, cardinals just don't do well for us. Even the neons, when they're really small, tend to be some of the more, I guess, weaker fish until they get to a decent size. So they could have just died. And then, of course, once that happens, once fish die, other fish start to eat them. That's just what fish do. But if it was a violent encounter, the one thing that really sticks out, of course, is the, I think, what do we have, a red-tailed shark in there? That's the one that really sticks out. Red-tailed sharks, in my experience, are notorious for chasing fish around. And they will do that, like I've had them in with mostly South and Central American cichlids, and that has worked out well. Maybe some more aggressive gouramis like the golds, the opalines. And that works out fine. But with the smaller fish, sometimes they will just chase them around and stress them out until they die or they catch them. They don't necessarily catch them and eat them like a larger fish would, but they will definitely bully them into submission. The angel, depending on how large it is, might have had something to do with it, but it would have to be a relatively large angel. Usually they're not fast enough to really stress out the cardinals in any way. I guess I should say it depends on the size of the tank. So if it's a smaller tank, they're easier to catch maybe. But those are the two. Could the black ruby barbs start picking on the cardinals as well? Yeah, they probably could too. So it really, the mix that you have before you added the cardinals wasn't too bad. I mean, you always have to worry about the angel with the red-tailed shark, but the rainbows, the cories, the common pleco, the red-tailed shark, and the barbs, I'm guessing they probably worked out fairly well together. But the cardinals, yeah, that could have been the culprit there. So,
Oh, there's a question about how to feed mollies. A betta. There's a female betta with mollies. How do you feed it? Probably the same way that I feed my guy who's in the column tank that we have with the ember tetras and the gold tetras. I usually wait for the betta not to be close to the surface. I feed them at least farther away from the betta, so the mad rush can go get their food. The betta kind of goes and says, "Oh, their food," and then I can put the food right above the betta, and the horde is already on. So I think Myrtle actually answered that too. You just try and kind of spread your food across the whole water surface, and then that problem's never going to necessarily go away. Not that it's not insurmountable or anything like that. It's just, you're right. Mollies go absolutely crazy. I actually have a similar. It's not quite it's the same issue, but I have the mollies in the 50-gallon lowboy, and in that tank we also have the pair of Apistogramma penduro, and we have some orange laser cory cats. And so my concern there is, while the apistos are certainly not docile, they'll get in there and get in the scrum of food. they don't consume the food as fast as the mollies do. And I've got, in that 50-gallon low boy, with all the breeding that's been going on there, there's probably at least 40 mollies in there. Yeah. And so luckily I have the surface area in that tank where I do a lot of what you just said. And that is, I'll put food in each corner of that tank. And then as they're eating that, usually flake food, something floating, and then for the Cory cats, and I've got some super red bristlenose plecos in there too, I'll drop some pellets kind of within the plants where it's a little bit harder for the mollies to get to. And then that's how I solve that issue. And I think I've been doing okay because they all seem to be healthy, happy, and living life really well.
And I do more frequent feeding too. Keeps them happier.
Yep.
Not as crazy. Hangry.
That's true. That's very true. So let's see here. Aquatic here. Anybody here from Texas? Because I'm trying to find a good local fish store besides PetSmart and Petco because they never carry any cool or exotic fish. Yeah, so if you're here from Texas and you know of cool places, feel free to share. Let's see here. Mary Page says, it's been a busy day, but a good day. We're trying to get packed up to head back home to Virginia. Not looking forward to a 10-hour trip that should only take 7. Oh, that stinks. Yeah, but getting home, I'm sure, will be a nice thing. You haven't seen your aquariums in 2 months? I'm sure it'll be nice to be able to get home and be back with the fish.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Scrolling on down. That's what I'm doing because I went all the way to the top of the chat, and now I've got to scroll on. Got all the good evenings, hellos, how are yous? Yes.
Renee wants to know, how many cichlids can I quarantine in a 20-gallon?
What type of cichlids?
Cichlids.
Yeah, so that will have, and how big? So are we talking about little tiny juveniles? Are we talking about imbuna? Are we like, okay, I've got some very small peacock cichlids that still haven't shown any color. Maybe we're dealing with apistos. So if we know what the type of cichlid is and how big they currently are, that would be helpful.
Here's a good question.
Okay.
I'm curious if you have the answer. All right. Reefing for Life 72. How do you guys not have 1 million subscribers? You're super informative and fun to watch. Come on, people, subscribe. How come you don't have 1 million subscribers? 1 million. That would be
that'd
funny.
Be pretty cool. Yeah.
See me drop dead.
Yeah. I mean, I never thought it was even going to be this. So
I know
the fact that when we started this channel, it was. And I think I've told the story before, but it was Luke and Eli, our 2 boys at the time. Well, that was 4 years. In fact, it'll be 4 years.
Already?
Wait, what's today's date? Oh my gosh.
Is it today?
It's almost
tomorrow.
No.
Wait, today. What's today? The 24th? 27th.
It's the 24th. We released I shot our first video on the 26th of February 4 years ago and released it on the 27th. And when we started this channel, it was just the boys were like, Dad, you've got all these fish tanks and you teach and do all this stuff. Why don't you put your stuff on YouTube? They were on my case about that for a good, they started saying that like in 2016. So it was probably like 6 or 8 months before I said, all right, let's talk about this. And, they were coming up with video ideas and all that stuff. So I'm just happy. I never expected this to be anywhere close to what it is and have this type of community. I still remember at one point when the channel was very, very young, we got up to like 182 subscribers. And I was like, wow, I don't know why 180 was like a big deal. I mean, like, wow, we got up to it was such a random number, right?
It's a fun number.
We got up to 180 subscribers. And then like a day later, we were down to like 176. And I'm like, well,
that was it.
Okay, I guess that's about as many subscribers as we're going to be able to get is about 180, maybe 200.
All downhill from here.
Yeah, and then things just kept going. So, I mean, it's in a lot of it is what you guys do. I've always said this, it's the community that really makes the difference. And when people share the videos and they're putting them on a Facebook group or getting the exposure, that's so valuable, right? And thank you for that, for those of you who do that, because it's a big thing for us.
We've got some really cool fish keepers and really smart ones too. Good grief.
It's a good community. Good community.
Inspiring.
Daniel asks, any tips for growing plants from cuttings? I keep buying cuttings, but they all die. What should I do? So I'm assuming by cuttings you're talking about like the stem plants, most likely. Like wisteria, water sprite. So there's a few things there. When it comes to the cuttings, obviously, you got to find out where you're buying them from. Are they growing them in water, or are they growing them out of the water? If they're not growing them in water, that can be a little bit more problematic for the conversion. That can be especially true for stem plants that tend to grow pretty fast. In fact, we have some, I think you bought wisteria. It was a tube plant, stem plant cuttings. I threw them in the 125 that's got some Fluval 3.0s. They really haven't started to do what wisteria does. And so there can be a significant amount of time that it takes for them to adjust. And in that process, sometimes they die back. So the easiest way, in my opinion, to get cuttings to grow, if they're stem plants, is to make sure you're buying them from a source where they have been grown in water and they've been stored in water and not grown out of water, because that transition for the stem plants, at least from my experience, has been a little bit more difficult. Of course, the other thing is making sure the temperature is right. Cuttings, if they're stem plants, once they begin to grow, they're going to need liquid fertilizers, right? Because they don't have an extensive root system, so they're pulling all of their nutrients out of the water column. And I also like to let them float. So that's the other thing too. When I took the water wisteria, when you gave me that stuff out of the tube, we just chucked it in the tank and it's floating. Mm-hmm. And I have found that when you are growing stuff from a cutting, that often works better than trying to, like, you know how some stores, they have like the little lead clip and then it kind of sinks. And yeah, it looks cool because it looks like a plant and all that stuff is together. And then what often happens is you start to see the stems rotting around where that little weight is. And then some of the bottom leaves aren't getting enough light. And so they start to die and then the stems start to get all mushy. So I have found that, at least with the cuttings, it's better to float them.
Yeah.
Do you concur?
I do.
Plant lady?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, so Eric wants to know, are you planning on breeding the orange lasers? Yeah, if you do, I want some.
So maybe. They're still a little bit small. And I think part of that is I broke them up into two groups, and I kind of regret doing that because now they're both in tanks where, quite frankly, if I ever wanted to get them out of there, it's going to be nearly impossible, because I had a group of the orange lasers. I think originally I might have gotten 10 or 12. And I think I put 6 in the 50-gallon lowboy, and I put 6 in the bottom 125 where the angelfish were. Well, now there's no way I'm getting out of that lowboy because they all go into the center by the rockwork and the plants. Yep. And there's a 0% chance that I am going to disturb that scape because it's one of my favorite tanks. So that's out, unless I see the eggs in the glass. The second issue is in the 125. They go under all the rock work in the wood. Now, there's a chance I could get them out and set them up in their own breeding tank, which I may do. One of the things that we had happen to us a week or two ago is our albino cories bred, which, I mean, their albino cories is, I think the albinos and the greens, at least in terms of breeding and selling, are probably the least amount of money you're going to get. But that was pretty cool. Went down, I was shooting a members only video, and all of a sudden there were eggs everywhere. They were all over, like, the front of the glass, the back of the glass, the sides. They were all over the leaves. There was so many eggs there. Unfortunately, I didn't have an egg tumbler, so I had to do a DIY egg tumbler. I got them all in there. They wound up hatching, and then I put them in a fry container, right? An external one where it sucks the water in, circulates it, and then it exits back out into the tank. Well, I put a little piece of sponge in the return, and that was blocking some of the water. So as a safety mechanism for that particular fry container, the breeder box is what it's called, the water was starting to overflow over like the lip of the front part, and it was almost kind of acting and looking like a hang-on back filter. I had pretty much all of the albino cory cat fry exit the breeder box and went right back into the tank, and from there it's like there's still the Apistogramma mendezi, there's Bolivian rams in there, and little tiny cory cat fry.
You never know. Maybe they're going to be really tough.
Maybe.
Like, wow, they made it.
But maybe as recompense for my horrible thing that I did, I put the water on, or the airflow on too high in that breeder box. I may have to get the orange lasers out of the 125 and power feed them and try to get them to breed, because that would be cool. I like those. And then we've got the Adolphi cory cats in the 75-gallon Gymnogeophagus tank, and those are really cool too. Those are probably my two favorite cory cats that we have in the fish room right now.
Also ones you never see.
Yeah, they come out during feeding.
All right, this is a great question. I'm very curious about this one. All right, James Manning asks, so when fish express their feelings and emotions outwardly, how can we distinguish the color differences between a happy solid color or angry or fish trying to be aggressive?
That's actually a really good question. So the coloration, what does it mean? It's hard to determine what it means unless you know unless you're watching them and seeing how they communicate. So, and it depends a lot on the fish, right? Usually the coloration is happening with cichlids, especially the peacock cichlids. Not as much with the mbuna because they don't change their colors quite as much. Some Tanganyikans will get a little bit of a color change, but especially with the peacock cichlids, I'm looking for anytime they are showing tremendous amounts of color and there's another male, it's a show of dominance. If there are brown and silver fish in the tank, in other words, there are female peacock cichlids, then they're showing off for the lady folks. And they're relatively simple in that way. That's pretty much what they do. It's either I'm colorful because I'm angry, I'm colorful because I'm in love. That's
wow. All right.
Yeah, that's I know.
We've got Ireland here. Powell. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. That's cool. Good morning. Probably,
wow,
right?
Good morning.
I would think in Ireland.
Was there
we've got a new member.
We
Ty
do.
Nelson, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Yay.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Jeffrey did a super chat. Thank you so much. Shout out to the Nano Nook.
Oh, hey!
The Nano Nook is alive and well. Justin has a super chat. Thank you so much. Starting a Neolampologus similis tank because of inspiration from you. Tanganyikan cichlids have become an obsession. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, I love the Tanganyikan cichlids. I know that they're not as colorful as some of the other cichlids, right? Certainly, they're not nearly as colorful as peacocks and mbuna cichlids and most of your South and Central Americans, but the colors they do have, that iridescence that they show when they're really happy or in love, or sometimes angry, that can be really interesting. And so, and not only that, they've got really awesome personality. So, especially your shell dwellers, when they're all doing their community thing and they're not overly aggressive like some of the other cichlids. But yeah, I that's one of the things when we go to swaps, auctions, the club meetings, I'm always keeping my eye out for Lake Tanganyikan fish that I haven't kept. That's kind of like my kryptonite, my money separating from me thing is the Lake Tanganyikan fish. If I haven't bred something or I see something unusual, like the last rare fish auction, that was where I basically spent far more money than I should have. I got the Furcifer roseba, which are outstanding looking fish, and the jumbo leptosomas, which they were. Yeah, I can't wait for those to get more bigger. Yep, that's English.
It always takes fish like that for him to spend more money than me on like hardscaping.
Yeah, that's true.
And plants.
And by the way, and I like this. I like that we're carrying over from last week. So last week I said, hey, if you've got a question, just make sure you put at Primetime Aquatics, because then at least on my little thing here, it highlights in orange. And then it makes it a lot easier for me to see the questions and for you too, right?
Yeah.
So thank you for doing that, because that makes things easier. Then I can answer questions a little bit more easily. So, yeah.
I got a question from Laugh. Hey, Laugh. All right. Will the baking soda trick you mentioned, remember that one?
Yes.
Okay. Only raise KH or both KH and GH? I have been using Equilibrium and loving it for everything else, but KH still low and therefore pH still low.
It will most likely raise the KH because that's what it's for. So, but once again, I always recommend whenever you're going to do additives, and that's baking soda, that's cichlid salts, whatever you're going to be adding to a tank, to try to adjust water hardness or pH. I would never, ever in a million years do that directly to the tank until I had a really good handle on how my water parameters, because you've got different water parameters out of your tap than maybe I would, than somebody would in a different part of the country. So how is this stuff reacting to my water parameters at the temperatures that I'm running at the, I would always put an air stone in there at least to have water circulation going, and understanding that's step one. And so once you do that, once you know, okay, well, I added a half a teaspoon of baking soda to this many gallons of water, it did exactly this to my pH and KH. Or I added the cichlid salts and it did this. Or I added aragonite. Aragonite I'm not so worried about because that's going to be more gradual. But the point is, or pH up or pH down, the chemical stuff I don't like to use as much. But if you're going to do that, don't experiment with the fish in there. Do that in a tote. They're cheap enough to buy. I mean, you can buy on Amazon those, even the big 30-gallon totes. You can buy them in, like, I think they're like 3 for like $30 or something. So, and you don't need that much. As long as you've got at least a few gallons to experiment with, you can kind of figure that out from there. Like, oh, okay, I added this much to 10 gallons and it had that big of an impact. Maybe go a little bit lower than that if you've got a larger tank with fish in it. And then hopefully it does similar things. Because, you know, the other aspect is once you start adding it to your actual tank, you've got living things in there that are producing ammonia and nitrite and nitrate. And so that's, and possibly live plants. And that's all going to have an impact on those water parameters as well.
Oh, hey, I've got a plant question. Can
Yes.
I get it? All right. Ed, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Jameis. Hi guys, I have a 300-liter African cichlid tank with a few anubias and Java fern attached to rocks. I keep getting black spots, algae I believe, on the leaves. How can I stop this happening? Well, if they are individual little black spots on your Java fern, those are actually spores. It's actually propagating. So congratulations, you're going to get some babies. You'll see the little roots. So the first time that you see that, maybe it'll look a little weird, like the plant is starting to die back or something because the brown little stringy roots are going to start popping up on your leaves. That means you're getting babies. That also means that your plant is getting stressed. So it's trying to propagate because something's happening elsewhere. But sometimes that's not a bad thing because you're still going to get more plants. So the mother plant may die, but you're going to get more baby plants. So it's all good.
Yeah. Now, if they're bigger, if they're starting to grow, that could mean the Java fern is starting to die back. If there's actually brown spots on the anubias in it was a peacock tank, African cichlid peacock tank, I believe.
Just African cichlid tank.
Then you could consider potentially using things like bristlenose plecos, as long as they've got some spots to hide. That has worked well to kind of keep everything clean up. Just with brown algae in general, I like to use them for that purpose. Biscotti Nanya. Any tips on using DIY Osmocote Plus root tabs? Yeah, I've used those things for a long time. Basically, and I've got a video on how to do it. So if you haven't seen that and want more information, you can check that out. But it's really straightforward. We buy gel caps off of Amazon. I don't remember right now off the top of my head. I have it linked in that video. So if you were to type in Osmocote or DIY root tabs and Primetime Aquatics in the description, in your search bar, in the description of that video, I'll have exactly what I used. But for the most part, I just take the gel cap, scoop the Osmocote Plus in, put the other side on, and just treat it as a normal root tab. The one thing you have to be careful of is if you've got fish that are going to disturb the substrate, then sometimes it's not the best option, because those little Osmocote beads will start to get up into the above the gravel. I haven't really noticed a huge problem with that. The fish don't eat that stuff. At least mine have never eaten it. And some people worry about, wow, it's going to spike ammonia or something like that. That also hasn't happened. But we've got basically a tub of those things, and we just use them every 6 or 9 months or so, just as normal root tabs. The one thing to consider is with the Osmocote Plus, there's a slightly higher copper concentration in those root tabs compared to maybe something that you would normally use for fish. If that's the case, then you have to think about, okay, well, if I've got shrimp in the tank or some invertebrates, some people have said that might have had an impact on their health and growth. Again, from my perspective, that has not been an issue, but there have been people who thought that maybe the additional copper in the Osmocote Plus might have had an impact on their invertebrate health.
All right. John, hey, you want to know what's best floating plant for a betta? Assumably this is for Grimmy. Hey Grimmy, that's his new betta. I like Sylvinia minima. It's really great, known as water spangles or water velvet, something like that. I think that's what it's also called. I love it. You're buy a little bit and you always have a lot. You'll always be scooping it out because it works great. I have it in literally all of my tanks. If I wanted it or not, I have it in all my tanks, but I love it. And you will too. Gives them lots of cover, and the roots grow down. It's really fun. And Grimmy's going to love them.
Yeah. Paul says, have you seen what happened to Gouliad Fish Farm? It's really hard to look at what he's dealing with. I didn't see it. So I saw on one of my feeds there, obviously he was dealing with all the weather issues and stuff. I didn't get a chance to look at it, but I can't imagine. It just stinks. You don't ever want to see massive issues like that happening. Mike asks, how do you become a member? Well, there is a member tab right below that comment that Myrtle just put in there. Thank you very much for that. So it pops up from time to time in here, and then also there's usually a little tab underneath like the title of the video. So it's a couple ways to do that. Let's see here. Brian, what kind of cichlids can I put in a 125-gallon tank? Well, a lot of different types. So there's a few different ways you could go with a 125 in cichlids. One, you could do like a giant Mbuna tank where you've got, oh my gosh, in a 125, you could eventually get to a point where you've got at least 45 or 50 Mbuna cichlids in a 125, at least. You could do a male peacock tank, which would also be cool, so the African cichlid side. And with a 125, you're really not limited in the types of peacock cichlids you do. So there again, it's overstocking all male tank would look pretty cool. And you'd probably do eventually, and I'm not saying throw 50 fish in your newly cycled tank, because that's going to be a big problem, but over time you could probably have at least 25, if not more, peacock cichlids. For our 125s, I've got one that's a Lake Tanganyika setup. So I've got a mix of like gold ocellatus. I think there's some Juliochromis in there. I've got some feather fins, some Cyprichromis, some Calvis. I don't expect a lot of breeding in that tank because all those fish are mixed together, but that's a pretty cool. I enjoy that setup a lot. In another of the 125s, I've got a group of electric blue acara, and then recently we added in the Vieja Synspilum, and so I'll probably have to deal with that because those Vieja are going to get big. Right now they're maybe like, I don't know, the biggest one's maybe 3.5 inches or maybe 4 inches at the most. Once they get larger, I might move the electric blue acara to another 125. You could do larger cichlids. You could do something as large as an Oscar in a tank like that and maybe mix it with not super aggressive South Americans. So maybe you do Oscars and severums, maybe some firemouth cichlids. What else? Geophagus might work in a situation like that. So you've got a lot of options. A 125 is a great tank. The 6-foot tanks are so much fun. All right. Scrolling on down, looking for highlighted things going on here. Justin, I already read that one. That was your videos inspired me to set up a similar shell dweller tank. Can't wait to get the fish in there. It's going to be awesome. Hope you enjoy it. Let's see here. M&C Aquatics. Would Lamprologus golds, Lamprologus ocellatus, gold ocellatus be okay in a 20 long or a 29? Either one. They're not going to use the extra height of the 29, so if you want to put them in a 20 long, there's not going to be a difference because the footprint is the same in terms of the length and the width. And those fish, unless it's time to eat, really stay close to the bottom. Like I had a group in a 20 long that I since moved to the 129 when you redid it and made it a guppy tank. And even in the 125, they generally stay in the lower third of that tank and will only go to the surface when it's time to eat. Now, with a 20 long, the best advice, the safest advice is to keep a pair in that tank and put a bunch of shells in there. Maybe you could do like a male and a couple of females, and then maybe that male bounces back and forth, and then you get a couple of breeding females in there. The only thing that you have to consider is a lot of times the parents, or if there's other fish in that tank, you don't get a bunch of fry survival. And so typically what happens is if you want to breed the fish, let them spawn. As soon as you see them constantly near the mouth of that particular shell, you could consider removing that shell, especially if you see little babies. That's usually I usually wait until I see a little tiny fry, and wherever they dart back into the shell, whatever shell that is, I will take that shell out and put it in a 10-gallon grow-out tank. So they're a little bit, I wouldn't say they're challenging to breed, but it's not going to be like your Maltese or your Simlis where you don't have to worry about fry predation for the most part, where like the Ocellatus, the Meleagris, the Brevis, those ones, the fry tend to go missing more often. And definitely the Ocellatus are more aggressive. So it's not something where I would necessarily recommend throwing in a half a dozen and be like, oh yeah, it's a good start. And then they wind up fighting and you see fish in the corner. Now, I did that only because I had a group that were fry. They were juveniles. They grew up together, and I put them in that tank. And because of the way I had the rock rock structured and the shells, it worked out fine. But I don't know long term if it would have. I kept them that way for, I say long term, but they were probably in that way for like a year, and it worked out. But I think that's more unusual. That's less common.
Here's a question for you. All right, Elflower 1 stars asks, how is the Marineland Pro 375 filter working? Just bought one today.
So a while back, I think it was like a week or two ago, I did a video on like the two most important for me. Right, the two most important features that I find on a hang-on back filter, and one is I really do like the internal motors where the impeller is actually in the water, just because I love the fact that it's quiet. And the second thing is the adjustable flow, and the Marineland Pro series has both of those things. So a couple things that I've learned. I haven't done the long-term update on that 375. I'm going to do that very soon, probably within the next couple weeks because it's been over a year. So what I usually do is I have an unboxing, initial thoughts, and then I wait a year because I want to have lots of experience with the filter. I want to give it not just filters, but any equipment. I want to give them a chance to break. I want to give them a chance to annoy me, right? Because that's important. You're not going to learn a lot by unboxing, like, oh, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. It's going to work out great. No, but when you're dealing with stuff, and the newness factor goes away, and it's like, well, that was great. That was great. That was great. Man, this is annoying. Why does this happen? So the 375, it's super quiet. I have yet to hear any of my Marineland Pro filters run, ever. The only thing that some people will complain about is the way that the water comes out. The water itself might make some noise. I don't have that problem because I keep our tanks filled, so if you've got like the rim of the tank, I never want to see the water level dip below that. It's just one of those things. And so because we keep our water level higher, it is dead silent. Like the adjustable flow, a couple things you're going to want to consider. One, be careful when you're running the cord, right? Because the cord is now connected to the impeller, which is in the water, and you just have to make sure that cord is not getting pinched by the filter itself when you set it down in the tank. And the second thing is, and this is really important with these Marineland Pros, if you leave that filter plugged in and the water level drops below the intake, so like let's just say you've got that thing running, you forgot to unplug the filter when you're doing a water change. If you do that for any extended period of time, like 20 minutes, a half hour, that motor mechanism gets very, very hot to the point where internally it expands and then the impeller's stuck in there. So we actually had that happen once where they were doing water changes downstairs. They forgot to unplug one of, I think it was a 375, and the internal motor housing expanded, and then that impeller, it was done. The filter was garbage after that. But if you don't do that, it will be a really good filter. I like the fact that it's got plenty of space for media, and it's got the center part where you can put in the micron filters or a filter bag. So yeah, it's been good. No complaints. And we've got, I think, 2 450s in the fish room, the Emperor 450s, and then at least 2 or 3 of the 375s. And other than that one issue, they've been good.
Okay, this is a good one. This was funny. I mean, it's cute. Okay. Lior asks, hi, big fan of your channel. Thank you. Good job. Got a SASIC 75 gallon. I have a parrot in love with a gold severum. She lays eggs. He tries fertilizing. It's sweet and sad.
Yeah.
Can I introduce more severums?
What size tank?
75.
And there's a parrot and a severum in there now that are paired up. And the parrot is the male, right? Is that what the story was?
He tries.
The short answer is it could be tough because by the time they get to breeding age, when both the parrot cichlid and the severums are at an age where they're like, yeah, I'd like to maybe start thinking about having a family, it can be tough to introduce new severums into that tank. So you can try it, but I would absolutely have a backup plan for that one because parrot cichlids are interesting. They're as bubbly as they are and as chubby as they are. They're very active, and they can be aggressive. Like they will chase other fish around, even though they generally don't do really any damage. At least I remember our parrot cichlid would chase some of our geophagus around. I think we had severums in that tank that he would chase around sometimes, and it was a 75 gallon. So It might work, but the problem is then what you're going to have is you're going to have potentially a severum pair, right? They don't appreciate fish getting anywhere near where they lay eggs. Like we've had our severums pair up in the 150 before, and they would chase all the other fish, and they had like the other half of the 150, but that could be a problem. Mary, thank you so much for becoming a member. Appreciate you being here. Arctic Dark, thank you so much for the super chat. Is it safe to ship live fish from Canada to Texas? I don't think so. Not right now. I would wait. It's going to take a while, from what I've read, for them to get things back into back to normal. So I don't know. I haven't kept up with it enough to know like the details of what is going on, like what's come back online. If it were me, I would first of all make sure that wherever you're shipping them from, obviously that they have power and that everything's okay. But I don't know what's going on with the airports and how they're doing. So I would probably investigate that first. And if you can wait a few weeks and give them time to catch their breath, that might be safer for the fish.
How about on a good day? If Texas was just business as usual.
Oh, sure. Yeah,
really?
Then you just have to figure out.
Texas?
Sure, you just have to figure out the temperature differences, and it's obviously going to be colder where you're at, and Texas will be a little bit warmer. So then you have to figure out the heat pack situation. Okay. Marty, thank you so much for the sticker, the thumbs up little guy there. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right, let's see.
I love stickers.
Oh, Jack, thank you so much for the super chat. Appreciate it. Thank you so much for your content. You have really turned me on to Lake Tanganyika and cichlids. I have a 29-gallon that I'm thinking of breeding Similis or Cottle punctatus. What can I breed above them? So, 29-gallon. I would say nothing. And here's why I say that. When either one of those fish breed, they're going to fill the tank. And they're not going to want... A 29 it's a taller tank than a 20 long, obviously, but it's not tall enough for the Similis to feel comfortable with fry and shells. They're not going to want fish swimming above them in that size tank. The other thing, too, is with the Cottle punks, once they breed, like we've got Cottle punks in a couple of our 20 highs, like our standard 20s, they do take up pretty much the whole water column. They are not fish that just stay at the bottom third once they start to breed, because what happens is the Cottle punks, they have relatively large batches of fry, and so you'll get 20 to 30 fry with every batch. And in a 29, you could have a couple different pairs. This has happened to us now in both of our 20s where we had two pairs, one on each side. They both bred. It was enough space for them to each have their own side. I didn't have any issues in that respect. In fact, the other fish that weren't breeding just kind of stayed towards the middle, upper areas, and everybody was fine. They did okay. But once those fry started getting larger, I've got 220 gallons that are filled with those things, and they take up every bit of that tank. So I would, if you want to maximize your breeding, just pick one. Pick one that you like. They're both awesome fish. You're going to love them. They're going to be active enough that you'll really enjoy them. And even the Similis will probably take up the top half of the tank. So it's not like your top half is just going to be completely, devoid of life. So, but that's awesome. Good luck, and I think you'll enjoy them both. Bonnie, thank you so much for the super chat. Appreciate you being here. Hope you're doing well.
Hi, Bonnie.
Let's see here. Melissa, thank you so much for becoming a member. Appreciate it. Glad you're here.
Cool.
Very cool. All right, let's see here. Now I'm starting from the bottom of the chat here, and I'll work my way up. Let's see here. Andrew asks, how would you remove the bottom trim without breaking it? I had a seal fail on a 55, and I have sand and grit under it. I need to remove before resealing and setting back up. How would I remove? So the short answer is I haven't done it, and so I'm not. I don't have a best practice for you. Obviously, you're going to need heat and patience, but if someone here is a pro in resealing tanks and have removed those either the top or the bottom frame, help Andrew out, man. Let's see here. Curtis said USPS is not shipping any live animals until 3/1. I'm assuming that's to Texas, so thanks for that. Thanks for the follow-up. Let's see here.
This is a quick one. Gus wants to know, is pH the same as water hardness?
That's a great question. So is pH the same as water hardness? No. pH is a measure of, and this is something we went over last week in the live stream. pH is a measure of basically these hydrogen ions versus these OHs, hydroxides or hydroxyl groups. And so it's a measurement of how those two things are in relative to one another, concentration. Water hardness is different. That's measuring different components. Now, KH will impact pH, but they are not the same thing. And by the way, I've done videos on water hardness and pH that can give you a lengthier answer for that. Nurban, I hope I'm saying that right. My peacocks flash once every few hours. Is it something to worry about? It depends. So if you've just recently added fish, then I would just keep an eye on them. Once every few hours, that's usually if they've got ick, they're flashing on stuff more frequently than once every few hours. Peacocks do that. They will flash on decorations and stuff. It's kind of like, okay, it's a sign of sort of kind of aggression / this is my area. So that's not uncommon. At the same time, if you've added new fish recently or within the last 2 or 3 weeks, I would keep an eye on them, because obviously flashing is one of the first things that you're going to see as a potential sign of ick. But I don't know, without the spots or labored breathing or clamped fins, if they're just flashing once every few hours, I would probably just keep an eye on them, but I don't think I would be adding meds right away. Unless it's like, oh yeah, a couple days ago or a week ago I started adding new fish and now they're starting to scratch a little bit, then I might want to look at that a little bit closer. What you got?
Okay, Night Rider. I just love that kit. Speaking of Cottle punks, we have a pair that have bred almost 6 times in different tanks, but we always lose the fry.
Ooh.
Any tips?
So, first of all, it's good that you've got a breeding pair that's decided that they like to travel, and when they do, they like to breed wherever they travel. So that's kind of cool. Losing the fry. So I have found a couple things is they almost always do that on the first batch. At least when I've bred them. Again, I've got multiple pairs in multiple tanks, and it just seemed like when they first started to breed, the first batch never seemed to survive well. And then after that, they did. So I don't know if it's, okay, they bred, they had fry, and then you moved them, and then you moved them, then you moved them. And it could be just a matter of they're always getting settled in a new tank, and so they're not settling in. The other thing to look at is obviously water parameters. Make sure that your water parameters are conducive to fry growth. Fry are going to be a little bit more sensitive sometimes to ideal water parameters, or having ideal water parameters compared to adult fish, although it's still debatable. But you definitely want to have a pH of around 8, a little bit above, I mean, at least 7.8. The water hardness, if you can get 8 to 10 degrees water hardness as a minimum, that's going to be good. But if you've got those things, the other thing to try, and this is something that we do, we've had really good luck, is live baby brine. I know it can be a pain to hatch. I know it can be a pain to buy. But if you want fry, not just Cottle punks, but any fry, we have found that the live baby brine is the great, awesome fish food that really allow the fry to get the nutrients that they need. So maybe try and take a look at those things. Bonnie, thank you so much for becoming a member.
Oh, welcome, Bonnie.
Appreciate you being here. We'll have a video out for you guys tomorrow around the fish room.
Enjoy it.
Kay Yang, hope I'm saying that right. Thank you for the super chat. Hey guys, I'm getting into Tropheus. Do you have any tips for raising them? What are some of your favorite species? So I haven't kept Tropheus in a long time, but a couple things to consider. One, you're probably going to have the best luck in at least, in my opinion, you want to keep them as a group, right? You're going to have you said you're getting into Tropheus. So I'm assuming that you're going to have a group of them. 75 gallon at least, so that you can have a decent group. If I were keeping them, I think if I were going to start a colony, I would probably put them in one of my 125s, just because I think I would have a little bit easier time managing their aggression. My favorite species, and now I can't remember the type, but they're red, and they're really cool. And usually in our clubs, they go for quite a bit of money, but they're, as adults, instead of like, you get the debosi or whatever, and they have like the yellow stripe. These ones have like kind of like a red color to them. So look for those. Those get really pretty as adults. So obviously meet all the water parameters and stuff, but don't feed them high protein diets. Like the bloodworms and stuff, you want to lay off that. They primarily like to graze on algae, so your algae wafers, your kelp flakes, that kind of thing. But those are really cool fish. They can be a little bit aggressive, so you'll have to kind of deal with that early on. It's best if you're going to set up a colony, try to get a decent number. Make sure your tank is cycled, and then if you're going to add more, once your tank is used to that load, try to get the next ones in there after quarantine relatively soon, because the larger they get, as you try to add new groups to that larger colony, that can be a little bit more problematic.
This is an older super chat, but did you see the one from Tiffany Underwood for $2? I don't
thought
know.
I did, but thank you so much, Tiffany.
Just want to say how much I love y'all and your channel. I don't remember hearing you say that. If you didn't,
I've been scrolling around. Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Let's see here. David, thank you so much for the super chat. I will be getting a 150-gallon tank by the end of the summer. Is an FX6 a good filter, or should I get something else? Yeah, it's a good filter for that size tank for sure. You don't see a lot of canister filters on my channel, only because, or in our fish room, just because I know me, and the me is too lazy to want to maintain them. So those big canister filters, it's an undertaking. Now, the good side, I guess, is you don't generally have to maintain them as often as a hang-on back filter. But I know that my desire to clean a canister filter is non-existent. So we had one on the 50-gallon lowboy. I basically set it up, left it alone, never cleaned it to the point where it was like a slow trickle. Basically, at that point, the tank was filterless. It just had an air stone and a bunch of plants on the molly tank, and that canister filter wasn't even running. I finally took it apart and cleaned it out, put it back together, and I was like, I don't want to ever do that again. And so there's a Seachem 35 on there now with an air stone, and it's working out fine. But for sure, the FX6, first of all, it's a great canister filter. So it's a very good choice. It will absolutely do well in your 150. So yeah, you've made a fine selection.
All right, you ready?
I'm ready. I was born ready.
All right, Nate. Hey guys, thoughts on a single honey gourami in a nano tank, 6-gallon cube, 12-inch cube. Also using that tank as a breeding tank for them.
Breeding tank for the honey gouramis?
I'm guessing, but he said there's a single honey gourami, so maybe a single now, but he...
Yeah, well, if you're going to breed them, obviously then you'd want to have them be the only fish in the tank, and then as soon as they breed, you're going to probably want to get rid of the female, just because get rid of her.
Get rid of her.
Get rid of this female. Flush the toilet. You told me to get rid of it. I didn't mean flush it down the toilet.
Oh my god!
Just been put in another tank, man.
What he said.
Yeah. So if you're going to use that, the 6-gallon for breeding, keep an eye on them, first of all, because that's not a very big tank. And so if they're not getting along, things can go wrong quickly. So you're going to have a backup plan. You're going to need a second tank anyway, because if they breed, female's got to go. Let the male care for the eggs. And then as soon as you get the fry free swimming, you can most likely, if you want to, remove the male and then start feeding the fry the live baby brine and stuff. So that's probably how I would approach the situation.
Cool.
Are you keeping up with the things, or are you?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I've got one.
Ooh.
Carolina girl, Clark. How do you make RO water or really, really soft tap water safe for betta when crushed coral and wonder shell isn't working, alkalinity hardness too low? So I don't do that. And I generally, because I don't use RO water, I don't remineralize it. However, that being said, probably the best source for that is, because it's something that they do all the time, is Flip Aquatics. Their channel. I know he did a video on how, because he does that with his shrimp, on how to remineralize that. And I think he may even sell a product that allows you to do that. So I might check with them, because they do that like every day. That's just what they do for their Caridina shrimp. They go RO water and then they have to remineralize to get the proper minerals in there for the invertebrates, the shrimps.
Okay, my turn.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. All right. Kevin. Hello from Kevin's Fish Room in South Africa. Hey. Okay, can I put Neolamprologus ocellatus and Leilupi in the same tank? The Leilupi seem a bit aggressive.
Neolamprologus, so gold ocellatus, Leilupi. What size tank?
No, no mention.
The answer is probably, but you gotta have. I would probably not want to do that unless I had a 4-foot tank. So I could see myself trying that in 33 long, 55 gallon, 75. Probably. I mean, I've got ocellatus in the 125. Obviously, it's a 125, but they can be mixed. It's just you got to be careful with the size of the tank. But I try it in a 20 long, no way. But 4 foot or greater, maybe. Cosville, are you familiar with Channel Military Arms Channel? You kind of look like Mac. Yes, I'm aware of the channel. Delta Charlie, would it be possible for you to display nitrifying bacteria under a microscope on one of your future streams? It would be great to see the unsung heroes of the aquarium. Oh. That would be cool. Except I would. So I think the way I would most likely do that is take the microbes to when school opens up again, because we've got a phase contrast microscope there, and trust me, that's where you'd want to see it. So a standard microscope, like your standard bright field light microscope, like the ones that you would typically use in a biology class, they're fine. But trust me, if I'm going to show microbes, I'm going to use the phase contrast because that's got a computer readout and everything, and you don't need to stain them in order to see them. So someday, I would love to do that using the phase contrast. Trust me, it'll be cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Here's one. Snowball and strike the budgies. That's fine.
Oh, I'm reading that right now.
Are you? What pets do you have besides fish?
Oh, wait a minute. I'm reading a different one.
Really?
What pets do we have? So we'll answer both of them. It's a 2-for-1.
Whoa.
2 for 1. What pets do we have besides fish? So we've got 2 dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Rocky and the Goobs.
Rocky and Rocky's pet dog, Goobie.
Yeah, and Rocky.
Her name is Gracie Elizabeth. I named her Gracie.
And I call her Goobs.
I call her Gracie so I could say when I tuck her in at night, "Good night, Gracie." But then her full name is Gracie Elizabeth. But we call her Goobie or Goobs.
Yeah, don't know why. So we got Rocky, and so Rocky's an American Bulldog. Goobs is supposed to be an English Bulldog that looks like it was probably mixed with a
Boston. So I call her a Boston Bulldog, but still they are like the royal family.
Do we have anything else floating around besides fish and dogs right now? I think that's it right now. I think we've so things change from time to time, but that's it for right now. Mm-hmm. And then your other question that I actually saw here was, what's the longest time you've ever kept cichlid fry with their parents and the majority lived? It depends on the cichlid. So I will generally keep Mbuna fry and peacock fry with the mother. So I'll let her hold, because they're mouth brooders. So I will let them hold the fry in their mouth. I will move them to a 10-gallon tank. I will let them spit the fry out. And I will generally keep the mother with the fry for at least a couple weeks. And I do that because when a female that's holding eggs or fry in their mouth, when they're doing that for 3 weeks at a time, they don't eat for the most part. And so I want to give them a chance to eat, get some weight back on. I don't want to put them right back in the tank and be harassed by the males again, because you can actually kill your females doing that, where they're just constantly breeding. They are always holding, and then they never get a chance to eat. So with the peacocks and the Mbuna cichlids, the African cichlids, I will generally just, like I said, leave them there for a couple weeks, feed them, feed the fry, and then put them back in the tank after they've had a couple, 2-3 weeks to kind of regain their strength. With South and Central American cichlids, it depends. Some are better parents than others. I have found, like the Epistos, you can pretty much leave them in there until they're ready to breed again. Right? So a lot of the South Central Americans are fine until they're like, oh, you know what? We're ready to have our second batch of children. And if all of those other fish are still in there, that's when things can get a little bit more interesting, where they might start chasing the other fish away. So it just depends on the type of fish. And then, of course, like the shell dwellers, if it's Similis or Maltese, I never remove them. If it's some of the more aggressive, like the Ocellatus, the Brevis, the Meleagris, I have to remove them almost immediately. Like I said, as soon as I see the fry, they go in a different tank. Otherwise, they often go missing. So it just depends on the fish. Yeah. Mysterious missing fish.
Okay. Whips World. Hey, Whips World.
What's up, man?
He says, hey, big shooter. I'm assuming that's channel reference. Okay. I'm going to do a non-specific African tank. I have a Senegal bichir. I want to get a leaf fish, maybe a couple, 3 or 4 Synodontis.
Okay. So the bichir and the leaf fish will work out relatively good together, I think, because they both eat relatively slow. The Synodontis eat a little bit faster, but I wouldn't say that they're as aggressively, they don't go after food as aggressive as like some of the other African cichlids. So I think that might work. I might do the leaf fish, maybe leave the Synodontis out for a while, and then just be careful with them. So the concern is, are they going to get out-competed? The bichir are going to get out-competed for food with the Synodontis cats. I doubt it, especially if you don't have a lot of them. But just keep an eye on it and have a backup plan in case you're finding, oh man, my bichir's not getting the food that it needs. So, Ripple and Water, thank you so much for the super chat. Getting my first betta. We'll be keeping it in a 29-gallon with Endlers, Borneo suckers, and probably, it says tummy nose.
Aww.
Tummy nose tetras, rummy nose tetras. Any random tips?
Lots of plants. Get lots of plants for the betta to hide and investigate and chill out. It's really make sure
the other thing too is what we found. The Endlers, when we had that mixed together, it was okay. It was just the Endlers were so energetic that it stressed the betta out.
Are these okay?
Yeah, so
just not kind of.
Yeah, I mean, Endlers in general are they're really active. So you might, if you haven't tried that combination yet, I might not do the Endlers.
Or just plan on smaller meals.
Yeah,
more frequently if you already have them.
Yeah, and 29 gallons is going to be easier because when we mixed those, we had them in like a 7-gallon or something like that. So that was obviously part of the problem. You got a 29, that might be better. Yeah. Especially if you don't have like 50 of them in the tank. The rummy nose tetras are cool fish. I like them a lot. Smaller feedings more often. That'll keep the rummy nose tetras and even maybe the Endlers from looking at the betta and being like, wow.
Nip, nip.
Those are some pretty special fins you got there. I wonder what they taste like. And as always, the combo that you have here is going to work fine. Your wild card is the betta. And so if you find that the combination is not working, I would probably remove the betta to another tank, and the other fish should probably work out fairly well together.
Then you just have to set up another tank. Darn it.
Yeah. Yep.
Here, Blake wants to know, my betta tail is shredded from an old tank he was in the sharp rocks. It's been 3 to 4 months since this happened. Clean water, no fin nippers or anything, but his tail won't grow back. Any ideas why?
Yeah, sometimes they don't. Yeah, sometimes they get ripped up a little bit and they just don't heal. They just look like that. As long as it's not getting infected, as long as you're not seeing any like white around the edges, and it's just, maybe it's not the best looking, but it'll be okay. It just won't be the best looking fish. Let's see here. Christopher. I'm new to plants and starting a 15-gallon planted tank. I got a 30-watt LED lamp and thinking of using that. How high would you place it over the tank? The short answer is I don't know, because I don't generally think of lights in terms of wattage. So 30-watt LED, I think you're probably going to have to... How high would you place it over the tank?
Well, is this like a non-aquatic light? Is this like a desk light?
That's what I don't know. So I think I'd need more information before, because if it's a desk light or something like that, that could be a different story, because it's not just the wattage, it's also the spectrum that we want to be thinking about too. And PAR, and so watts don't necessarily equate easily to that.
And keeping it from falling in the water.
Yeah. Okay, DC says, is internal bacteria the same as internal parasites, just different people says different ways? I think the way that they're used, the way that people say it in the hobby, yes, they generally can be used interchangeably, but not necessarily correctly. And so what I mean by that is usually when we use the word parasite, we're describing a type of organism that has a cell structure similar to our own, if it's a single-celled organism, or a multicellular organism like maybe some type of a worm. All right. So strictly speaking, when we're saying internal parasites, from a scientific perspective, you would expect it to not be bacteria. But I think the way that, generally speaking, when someone says, you've got some internal parasites, I think the way that a lot of people use it is that it's just, it could be bacteria. The bottom line is you don't know. Unless you do a fecal smear, we really don't know if it's bacterial, if it's a protozoan thing, if it's some kind of a multicellular organism, until you do the smear and look for cysts or the organism itself.
All right. Ian wants to know, wanted to know if you had blood parrots and angelfish together. I'm looking to get a tank so I can house them together.
Yes. If in fact, I think one of the videos actually shows this, where we did like the fish room before the fish room, and I showed the 75-gallon way back in the day. And in that, there were some relatively smaller angelfish and the blood parrot. That being said, I wouldn't do it again, because the blood parrot is rambunctious usually, and they're going to swim around and they're going to be all crazy, and their energy level tends to be high. I found that the angelfish spent a decent amount of time trying to avoid the blood parrot. And so if I were keeping those fish, I probably just wouldn't keep them together. Just because of the activity levels don't match up quite a bit. And if the blood parrot decides to chase the angelfish, he's really going to stress those guys out, because there's no way those angelfish are getting away from the blood parrot. They're just too rambunctious. Finwiggles, thank you so much for the sticker. Got the fan, the #1 fan thing, and a jumping up and down thingy. Thank you so much.
So cute.
And then I saw here Ginger Graves. Thank you so much for the super chat. Appreciate you being here. Loving the small scape.
Thanks, Ginger.
That's you. You are the small scape.
That's right.
And we mentioned this earlier, but you are going to have your first merch coming out. It will be on primetimeaquatics.com.
Yeah.
But it will be coming out pretty soon. So, yeah, that's kind of exciting stuff. When I saw what you brought home and said, hey, look what I'm working on, I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool.
Is that how the conversation literally
That
went?
was pretty much the only conversation. Yeah, that was the only thing.
Good to know.
Yeah, I know. Let's see here. Legend Fish Tanks. I'm not sure how rare this is, but my red top Mbuna cichlid bred with my female peacock dragon blood is that rare Mbuna peacock cichlid hybrid. I have found that dragon bloods and OBs will pretty much breed with a lot of different fish, especially the dragon bloods. I mean, they're dragon bloods, and most of the common OBs are hybrids anyway. The OBs, depending on the line that you have, some of them can actually have a lot of Mbuna genes in them, which is why they can be somewhat aggressive at times. So it happens. Now what you want to do with the fry, you could do a few things. If you leave them in the tank and I don't really want all these hybrids, probably leave them in your community tank. You'll never see them. They'll eat them all. Even the males will, actually the females too, or not the females, but the males will eat those fry as well. So if you want to see what they look like, you'd have to probably remove the female, but then what are you going to do with these hybrids? Because that could be a problem, right? All right, let's see here.
Wait, KJ wants to know, should I worry about my 2 male angels fighting? Should I rehome one?
What size tank? What size tank? What other fish are in there? And then what kind of decorations you have going on? Sometimes I've found angels will straighten things out. I've had them in a number of different tanks, anywhere from 29 gallons up to 125s, and I have found that sometimes they go through these spats where they kind of do the little shake at each other, like, no, I'm the man. No, I'm the man. No, I'm the man. I'm better than you. And they kind of do the little thing, and you're like, oh, this is going to turn out bad. And then all of a sudden, like a week later, they don't even recognize each other anymore. So, and then sometimes they will fight to the death and lock lips and do all that stuff. When they start doing that, most likely you're going to have to remove one of them. Fat Man Aquatic says, after what happened to us here in Texas, do you mind sharing what your plan B is for your fish room if you lost heat power for longer periods of time, provided you have one? First of all, I'm sorry that that is happening, and that I can't imagine the stress that is happening right now. So plan B, if we lost heat and power, which means if I lose heat, that means I've lost power, since that's the only reason that would happen. So like, even if I just lost heat, like if my furnace went out, I'm not super concerned because our basement tends to hold heat fairly well, and I've got space heaters. So I can just go to the space heaters, and between the space heaters, I would probably leave my lights on. So if I had power but no heat, I would leave all the lights on in my tank, because believe it or not, when you've got 70 tanks, having the lights on generates a fair amount of heat, even with LEDs. And then I've got a space heater. And between those two things, I think I could probably be okay for, unless it was like extremely cold, for quite some time. If I lost power, this is a significant problem that I have right now, because what I need is a generator, and I don't have one. And it is a very big hole in my fish care. And the more tanks I get and the more expensive fish I get, I keep thinking about this. I absolutely need to get that done. I need to have a standalone generator that can at least run. The big thing is I need a generator that can run, and people have a lot of tanks. You should be able to power a large central filter. And so for us, it's actually fairly easy, because if all my hang-on back filters went down, so be it. They're really just there to deal with mechanical filtration in some of our more heavily stocked tanks. But I have to have something that can run my central air pump. If I have that, and I have something that can run the space heater, I'm really not that concerned. So I do need to get a generator. And if you have not as many tanks, then some type of battery backup, maybe a smaller generator that's battery powered that can be recharged, or a small gas generator might work out.
I got two. I'm going to take back to back. Sorry. All right. So Crazy Cakes Hill. Funny. I have a question. Have you ever used semi-aquatic plants? On my channel, The Small Escape, semi-aquatic plants are coming very close. I don't know if you want to answer to where, if you've ever used them.
Semi-aquatics?
Yeah, not really.
Just the one that you brought home one time, and you're like, I don't know, you brought home a semi-aquatic plant.
Ago, it was like gold ribbon or something.
No, I don't think you realized it was.
Yeah,
I think you just got it
before I knew what gold ribbon was.
Yeah, so she brought home this plant. I'm like, this is semi-aquatic, right? And she's like, well, what am I gonna do with it now? I'm like, I just kind of wedged it between the lid and the back of one of the Lake Tanganyika tanks. It's been growing fine ever since.
It's the funniest things you learn when you,
Yep.
Good times. Marla Craig, thank you all so much for the great information. You have helped and inspired me. I've learned so much back into the hobby after my father passed away, saved me, and helped with grieving process. That's great.
Sorry to hear about that. It is tough. I'm glad, it's interesting because, some people think about just, it's keeping fish. It's a hobby. It's something to do, something to waste your money on. And for a lot of people, it can be very powerful. It can be a very powerful hobby. I know I've mentioned this many times before. When I was a kid, it was some of my best memories were keeping fish and going to the fish store with my dad and getting these fish home and just watching the tanks, and you get lost in their ecosystem, and that can be really, really something. I know I had a family member that had cancer, and she was going through that process, and she said one of the things that she would do is just sit in front of her fish tank and just get lost in the world of the fish and just kind of help make everything okay. So Eve, thank you so much for the super chat. Really appreciate it. Loving the fish journey. Thanks for all you do. Well, thank you for being here. And again, thank you for the super chat. Dave from Iowa, thank you so much for the super chat. Really appreciate it. All right, let's see here. James asks, this one's not for you, Jeremy. How heavy would you fertilize a heavy planted tank to match the needs of all the plants? So there's two things going on, right? There's two types of fertilizers. One, you need to have the root tabs for all of your root feeders. So if you've got things like sword plants, or you have crypts, just to name a couple of examples, you're going to want to put root tabs in there for them. And so generally speaking, I try to, so if I've got a crypt planted in the substrate, I might put those root tabs maybe 3 inches or so away from where the plant was planted. Those roots are going to spread out. And when a plant is really growing well, those roots spread out all over the tank. And so then if I'm really heavily planted, I might be putting a root tab like every 8 inches or so away from one another in all directions. And then you've got the liquid fertilizers. So for us, for liquid fertilizers, we use Easy Green. And there's a lot of nitrates in Easy Green. There's a fair amount of phosphates. So I generally start out by following the directions. That is I think it's 1 squirt per 10 gallons, and just see where that gets you, right? And then they've got all the supplementals as well. They've got iron, they've got, I think it's phosphorus, phosphate. So start with something like an Easy Green, where it's pretty concentrated. You do the 1 squirt per 10 gallons and then say, okay, is this working? Are my plants doing okay? Am I getting a bunch of algae? Because that's the last thing you want, is have to try to combat that as well. So that's kind of how I would roll with it, at least to start. And then you can always add more.
Okay. Gus wants to know, oh gosh, where'd your question just go? Any suggestions for a 60-gallon intermediate?
60-gallon intermediate. So I'm assuming here the 60-gallon is going to be your 4-foot 60-gallon. That's got the same dimensions as a 55, just like an inch or so taller. Intermediate. 60-gallon. 60-gallon, huh? I know there's so many options, right? When people ask about what kind of options you have, it's like, okay, what kind of fish are going to pop into my head?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously for the intermediates, you're always looking at cichlids, right? So you could do a group of apistos. You could do, like the apistos, the rams. Maybe you could look at Nanocara anomala. That's a really cool one for intermediate, where they're a little bit more aggressive, but they basically look like electric blue acaras, only smaller. You could maybe go the other direction, a 60-gallon, be like, I want to do some Lake Tanganyika fish. And an intermediate combination might be, I've got some type of rock dweller like Juliochromis on the bottom, and then you've got some Cyprichromis or some featherfins, ophthalmotilapia in the upper water side of things. That could be really cool. 60-gallon, you could do angelfish. I know you said intermediate, but you could certainly try that. What else? What else would I do? I'm trying to think of some interesting fish. And then with the angelfish, or just something like even the apistos, you could start working with the different types of tetras. I like the black phantoms a lot. Those are pretty cool. Congo tetras are fun as well. So the Colombian tetras are pretty cool. So it depends. There's so many options. You almost have to figure out like what direction you want to go. Cichlids, non-cichlids, African, South Central American.
Just do a bunch of green neons. Yeah.
Dolbeck Aqua Designs. Thank you so much for the super chat. Appreciate it. Glad you're here. All right, we'll take a few more questions. A couple more. I can't believe how fast this time of ours goes. Yeah.
Holy moly. Wait. Here. I just lost it. Okay, 75. Brian wants to know. 75-gallon was gifted to me. Stocking ideas. I'm thinking South American community, few big schools, and either some apistos, dwarf flag cichlids, or goldeneye cichlids. Yeah.
So I like the idea with the types of cichlids you've got going on there. I don't necessarily know if I would mix those. You said either some, so that's cool. I like the apistos. I there's just so many of them. Whether you do, like my favorites are definitely the Apistogramma penduro. I think those are really cool. They don't get really big, but they're really awesome. Then you got like the triple reds. You got the orange flash, Agassizii. I mean, you cannot go wrong with apistos. That's what's so cool about them. The Borellii are another one I really like a lot.
Could you do rainbows or discus?
In a 75? I don't know if I would do discus. When discus are full grown, they get really big. So for me personally, I'd probably prefer to have a 6-foot tank for discus. What was the other one? Rainbows? Rainbow fish? Sure. Yeah, you could do rainbows in a 75. We've got them in our 75 right now. Could you do them with that combination? Yeah, I think that would work out pretty well. So a few big schools. Depends. The nice thing is if you're keeping something like an apisto, your
schools of fish the individual fish don't have to be very large, right? One of the ones that I really like are the brilliant green rasboras. Those are really cool. They're pretty active. They stay somewhat mid-water, so that's something to consider. Again, I'm a big fan of the black phantom tetras. I like those. You could certainly do like a marble hatchet fish at the top. What else? If you want the apistos to breed, if you don't care about them breeding, then you could do some type of long fin sort of pleco. That would be pretty cool. What else would I do with a big school? A big giant school. I've always liked black neons. I know they're very common, but when you get a giant group of black neons, they're pretty hardy. They tend to get a little bit larger than the regular neons. And
why would you pick black neons over green neons?
Because I like them better.
I love green neons. You guys know
tell
that.
it like it is.
I love them.
Yeah. So all of those would be pretty interesting. Let's see here. Setting up a 65-gallon for discus. Would 4 or 6 be best? We'll have some quarries and a gold nugget. So 65-gallon, I'm assuming that's the 3-foot 65. That's a little bit taller. You'll probably be able to grow them out in the 65. I don't know if you're going to want to keep them in there long term. And when I say grow out, I mean, you're going to have a little bit of time before you have to deal with it. But if it's a 3-foot 65, you might have them in there for about a year. And then you're probably going to want to think about moving them to, like I said, a 6-foot tank. And so I wouldn't go more than a few, even with that size tank. I mean, if you're going to get them at like, this size, couple 2-3 inches, you'll get a solid year out of that tank. But to really see them in all their splendor when they're bigger, you're going to want a larger tank.
Michael, I didn't ask you. You had asked this before. You're talking about the shirt that he's wearing here. Yeah, that's a discontinued color. So we only have I think a few 3X left. But we have going forward, we have the blue try in that, and then we've got the chalkboard design, and then we've got another design coming out.
Oh yeah, I forgot. I actually forgot about that one when I was talking about the new designs. There's going to be a cool one coming out pretty soon. Yeah. This kind of thing, only different, right? Well, sort of, kind of. It's kind of the same, but also very different.
The same, but different.
It's going to be cool. All right, let's do 2 more. 2 more questions. Let's see here. I'm going to scroll on through. Finwiggles, is there a truly nano rainbow? I think the thread fins are probably...
They were super tiny though.
Although I don't know. They're not necessarily the same genus as the rainbows, like the standard rainbows, but they're called rainbows. Thread fins are awesome. I mean, they are really pretty fish. Yeah. So that's something. In fact, I think we still have, if you were to go back, if you want to see what they look like, I believe we had those, or we might still have a few in the, we call it the brown tank. It was the driftwood. It was like a Universal Rocks thing. It was, we probably did a while ago. It was a 20-gallon.
Is it the first one that has the tree coming
down? The big piece of wood, and there's some tiger limia in that tank as well. But those are really cool. I think you would definitely like those. Those are pretty awesome.
So if a rainbow fish was really, really tiny, how tiny would their little head be? Because they already have tiny heads.
Oh my gosh. Like the Bosemani, like someone shrunk them down.
It would be like Beetlejuice. Yeah. That guy sitting next to Beetlejuice.
Man, what are you doing? Yeah. Yunky, I hope I'm saying that right. Yunky, thank you so much for the super chat. Thanks for all the great info. Greetings from Puerto Rico.
Oh,
well, thank you. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. But the weather is much nicer there than it is here. Although we finally started getting into the 30s again. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, we're starting to defrost.
Yep. Yeah, it's cool stuff. All right, one more. What do we got? Let me scroll around here.
That was Beavis.
What was Beavis?
I don't know. Sugar Scoop said that was Beavis. He loves Beavis and Butthead, so if you're referring to that voice.
Yeah, it was just, it's something that...
Sneaks out.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is like the coolest thing I've ever seen, Beavis. Yeah. That's pretty cool. That's about as good as it gets. Sorry. It's been a while since I've tried to do those voices. And as somebody who, I really wasn't a kid in the 90s. I was basically a young adult, but it didn't matter. We used to watch the show anyway. We walk around doing the voices everywhere we went. Oh, man.
Wow. Those
were the days.
Around you.
Yeah, those were the
goodness.
days. Yep. All right, here we go. Mollier.
I have a betta that has been swimming to the top and spending a lot of time up top, then spending a lot of time at the bottom. My tetras are doing good in the tank. It's just my betta. So bettas do that. I know, like we've got Clear Bob over here, and Clear Bob, he does the same thing. He'll just lay down and he'll kind of lay on the ground, and then he gets up, especially when he sees us, he just gets up and he's like, hey, how's it going? And he'll swim to the top and wait for his food.
He begs for food.
Bettas, especially as they get older, they're not really, at least I don't think they're super active. Right? Some are. I mean, they all have their personalities, but you just get some lazy bettas as long as they're eating, right? And the big thing too with that is a lot of times what happens for people who haven't kept bettas before, they assume that the bettas are okay at standard room temperatures in the low 70s. And when that happens, they become very inactive and stop eating after a while, often. So as long as the temperature is like 76 or above, so you might want to just check the temperature, and the betta's eating, sometimes you just get lazy bettas. Now, if you start to see like, okay, the other fish are starting to nip at it and stuff because it's laying around, that would be a different story. But so that's just something to consider. All right, everybody. I think we are going to call it a night. Thank you to everybody who popped in and hung out with us today, and hopefully we got to answer enough questions. And thank you to all those people who did the super chats and the stickers and the new members. Thank you to our wonderful moderators, Myrtle and Clint and Mary Page, for all that you do and keeping things running smoothly. And we will be back here, same time, same place. And I think next week we'll have a topic. We'll do a topic. By the way, if you want to do a special topic, if you want us to cover something in a live stream, how about this? Leave that not in the live chat, because the live chat's going to go away. But if you want me to cover something in a live stream, leave it in the comments section. So after this video, uploads, and you can like just leave normal comments like, hey, how about this for a future live stream sort of thing? So leave that down in the comments section. I think that'd be pretty cool. So thank you again, everybody, and we will see you next week.